Hi, this is Don with Ridge Engineering. In this tutorial I'm going to give you an introduction to the new PC Warrants version 2 software that we're just about to release. I'm not going to show how the software is installed. It's just a general Windows program that is installed the way any Windows programs are installed. You do have to have administrative rights to do the installation, so I know for some people that means getting your IT department involved, but there's not much we can do about that. That's a Windows thing. But once you get the software running, this is the first screen that you see. Now, this tutorial is primarily for people that have used or have seen PC Warrants version 1. The main point of this tutorial is to show you the differences between this version and the old version. If you're a new user and you've never seen PC Warrants, I think you'll still get a pretty good understanding of how the software works and what it looks like. But there may be some things that are a little confusing because I'm talking primarily to the users of the existing software who have been using this software potentially for many years. So this is the startup option screen that you see, and it's pretty much the same as before. At the current time, we haven't enabled the multi-way stop study option. That will be added very soon, but most of the changes, in fact almost all the changes, are in the Signal Warrants module, so that's the emphasis right now. Okay, so when you first run the software, you'll typically want to go to the Preferences screen, and this is very similar to the version 1, laid out a little bit different because in general we assume we have bigger monitors for to display the software, so we take advantage of that extra space. On the left are the MUTCD Signal Warrants that are enabled by default, and for most people they will have warrants 1, 2, and 3 enabled, and then they will enable the other warrants as needed based on the particular site that they're using. But usually warrants 1, 2, and 3 are enabled, and most people disable the required delay data on the minor street initially because they don't have that delay data, and they don't. But you can get a sense for what's going on with the volumes if you don't require the delay data initially. And all the various default values for the warrants are on the right side of the screen, and you'll almost never have to touch those. In fact, probably you never will have to adjust any of those. If a particular state decides that they want to tweak some of these numbers, well, you can, and they're on this screen. The multi-way stop options will be on this screen. The paths, which are where the various files are stored, are on this screen. The report titles that are printed on the top of the reports, and the screen settings. Occasionally, if you have an odd screen where things don't look quite right, you can make things work by changing these numbers. This is kind of an advanced feature. Probably don't do it unless we tell you to. Now, one of the new features of PC Warrants version 2 is it's very much aware of Windows 7, 8, and 10, and it uses the default libraries to store the data. You may remember that in PC Warrants version 1 there's a problem storing files in the same folders as the program files. Windows doesn't want you to do that. In fact, makes it almost impossible to do that. And so we are following the Windows convention, and the data is being stored up in the user area in the libraries, and you can still move things to a network drive or whatever you want, but the default is to the library section on your hard drive of the local computer. But again, you can edit those very easily just by hitting the edit button and navigating to where you want to go. The report titles are what's printed on the top of every report, just like in PC Warrants version 1. You can play with that if you want. Now, we can either start a new study or open an existing. Let me open an existing study to start with to give you show you some of the basic screens. So we can pick a file, and if you want to navigate, you can navigate on the tree. If you want to change the starting folder at the top of this tree, you can click on this button and then navigate to a particular folder. This is a little different than version 1, but this is using some of the standard controls that are in Windows nowadays, and so it's a little bit more modern look. So we're going to pick Demo 1 PEDS for no particular reason. Now this is the main screen, and again it's similar to version 1. On the left hand side are the warrants, and if they're in green they're enabled and the proper data has been entered to evaluate those warrants. If it's in gray, the warrant is disabled. If one of these happened to be red, that would mean that the warrant was enabled, but that there was some data that was missing. And if you remember from version 1, that was an important part of the software, was making sure that you had the appropriate data before you tried to evaluate the warrants. On the right, it shows the warrant status. Red means not met, green means met. At the top are the icons for doing other things in the software, going to the reports, saving a study, opening another study, going back to the startups. And a little bit different, the study details is on this screen, and you can enter the name of the study here, and you can change the date that's printed at the top of the reports. It defaults to the study date that's in the study file if you open it, or to the current date if you're starting a new study. And if you want to just change it to the current date, you just hit the Today button and it changes. Today's the 19th. So we can look at the various screens, look at the volume data. Now this screen has been compressed a little bit so that it will fit in the window that I'm recording on this screen. Normally it will pretty much fill your screen and be a little bit bigger, but it's pretty much the same screen as before. You can crunch it down so that you see the hourly totals for each of the approaches. There is a factor data window that allows you to factor the data. It's typically the right turns, but it can be something a little bit more elaborate. There is, for the people in Ohio, the ODOT right turn factor worksheet hasn't been implemented yet, but I'm sure it will be because we have so many people in Ohio. So that's not quite enabled yet, but we will have that pretty soon. Just let us know if that's a bit of a problem. But there are ways you can factor the movements in different ways if you need to. I'll get to the volume wizard when I come back here for a new study. Now the software, as in version 1, looks at the warrants that are enabled and then lets you know if you have enough volume data for those warrants. So if you have warrants 1 or 2 enabled, you need at least 8 hours on 3 approaches. If you only have warrant 3 enabled, which is unusual but possible, then you only need 1 hour. So the software is smart enough to tell you, based on the warrants that are enabled, if you have enough volumes to actually evaluate the warrant. If you only do a 4-hour turning movement count or a 2-hour turning movement count, for example, and try to use that to do a warrant study, the only warrant that applies for that data is the peak hour warrant, and that's pretty weak. So normally you're going to have 8 hours or more of data, and the software will let you know that that's good enough. Now the site data screen is pretty similar to what version 1 has. It has the intersection diagram on the left side. It has some study information, and currently you can edit the date either here or on the main screen. Either way works. It has the options that are enabled so that you don't have to go to the preferences to change the options. You can change them here while you're actually looking at the data that you're changing. And there's a what's missing section that was in version 1, but it was activated by a button. Now we have enough room. So you can see if any of this data is missing, it'll be in red, and the OK button will be in red. Once all the information for the enabled warrants is available, then the OK is green. For example, if I clicked on the crash experience, which requires the number of correctable accidents in the last 12 months, I don't have any information there. So now this site code button, the OK button, is red, and it tells me that I haven't put in the proper number. If I put in a number, then it's happy again. All right, so same thing for the other warrants as you're going along. If you don't have the information that you need, it'll tell you. There is a little bit of a difference in version 2 in the rural versus urban settings. It was a little bit more complicated in version 1. You had to put in the 85th percentile speed or check a box for the built-up community of less than 10,000, but 90% of people just wanted to be able to set the urban versus rural settings, which, if you remember, affects the volume criteria for some of the warrants. So now we make it more direct. You just simply say, I want to use the urban settings or the rural settings, and the software responds appropriately. Again, if you want to change the north-south, the major approach from north-south to east-west, you can use these. So now the software knows which is which. And if you want to disable an approach because it's a T intersection, you can just hit the button, and now the software knows there only should be 3 approaches. So we're not going to worry about that for now. So in general, on the site code screen, the site data screen, you try to first you make sure that the warrants that you have enabled are the ones that you want to enable. Then you make sure that you have the appropriate information put in for those warrants so that the OK button is green. And then when you go back to the main screen, if the volume data is happy and the site data is happy, then the software will evaluate the warrants and give you the results. And that's pretty much the same as before. Now, each warrant has a detail screen, and these are almost identical to the previous software. You can change things if you go here and you realize, oh, I really shouldn't be using rural settings. I should be using the urban settings. So you can change that, and then it'll ripple through the rest of the software. And you can see that it changes the criteria for the volumes. So you can look at warrant 1A and see that this is see the individual details, and it shows you the hours that meet the warrant, and if there's not a lot of warrants, then in this case none of the hours meet the full warrant because we don't have enough major. You can see that the highest major is 397. We need 420, so that's not going to work. Now, that's because so let's go back. We recognize, oh, we actually changed the major approach should be east-west. You can see by the 11,000, 11,000. So now, if we go back to warrant 1A, now we have 7 hours that meet. Not quite meeting, but different than before. So the major road is important. So now this makes more sense. And if I use the rural settings, that changes the major and minor a little bit, and now we have 9 hours that meet. So make sure you can make a lot of difference based on these settings. So let's go back. Same thing for warrant 1B. Here we have 11 hours that meet, and again it's looking at the 96 potential hours that have 15-minute boundaries. It finds the ones with the highest total and then shows them on the screen. So you can see which hours meet and which ones are close to meeting. So here's one that's 94. The 100 is the criteria, so but that's still pretty, that's pretty close. That gives you an idea of, okay, we have a few that are relatively close here, and the volumes are much higher than the requirements. So and 1C is a little bit more of a complicated situation. You have to it looks at whether 80% of warrant 1A is met or 80% of 1B is met, but they can be different hours. So we have that broken up into two different grids. So you can see the 1A hours and the 1B hours. And so 9 hours meet 1A and 9 hours meet 1B in this particular case. And you can see the criteria up here. So this is nice if you're not sure why the 1C, which is the combination warrant, is met or not met. You can see all the data on this screen. Warrant 2 has a graph, so you can click on the button to see the graph and to see the points and get an idea of how this looks. So that looks, you can see that quite a few of the points are above the line. They're in green. The ones that don't meet are in red. Peak hour delay, we don't have delay data, so it's very easy for the volume data to meet the peak hour delay warrant. The delay is normally what makes it harder to meet, but you can still get an idea if the volumes are high enough. If here we're blowing them out, we have 30 hours of the 96 are above the 800, 150 criteria. But a lot of intersections that you're doing will not be as high a volume, and you may realize that I don't have enough volumes to meet the warrants, so it doesn't matter if the delay meets the warrant because you need both. So what most people do with warrant 3A is they will evaluate it without the delay data because they almost certainly don't have the delay data. They'll look at the volumes, and if they don't meet the warrants, then it doesn't matter what the delay data is. The warrant's not going to be met. If the warrant is met very, very strongly, like in this case, you might be able to make a hand-waving argument that if there's that much traffic out there, there almost certainly is going to be enough delay. I'm not sure I'd buy that, but enough people tell me that that's their logic, that's what they do. If it's sort of in between, that the volumes meet the warrants but not by a lot, then there's a good chance that the delay will be the determining factor, and you probably need to go out there and do a delay study if the other warrants aren't making it, aren't helping you meet this warrant. So most people will not do a delay study until they have to, and that's only if the volumes meet but not really strongly, and warrants 1A, warrants 1 and 2 don't meet, or the other warrants, the accident warrants or whatever. Okay. Same thing with B. There's a graph here. Again, it shows the graph for that particular data. And I'm not going to go through the other warrants. They're very similar. And some of them are a little bit different. But in general, they will show you the information, and then you can use that as to decide what to do. So let's go back to the startup options and start a new study. And this gives you a clean screen. The warrants 1, 2, and 3, we don't have enough information to evaluate the warrants, so they're red, and the warrant status is undetermined. The yellow means it's not determined. So let's go get some volumes, and we do that by going to the volume data screen and then to the volume wizard. Now we have 3 of the imports done. Count Pro for people that use Count Pro from counting cars, Petra Pro for people that use JMAR turning movement boards, and Trax Pro for people that use JMAR Trax counters. So let's do a Petra Pro count. And with this, you can select the study that you want to use. Let me just pick this sample data. And the software populates the screen with the numbers. Again, this is almost identical to version 1, so I'm not going to go into great details here. But the basic idea is that you can take these volumes and you can, there's 2 groups of numbers, and so you can use the second group and decide what to do with them. You can see that there are some non-zero values in the truck group, passenger vehicles. There's a lot going on, so it takes a few seconds for the screen to repopulate. And then one of the titles is PEDs, so the software knows enough to add the PEDs to the PED totals, but if for some reason you don't want to do that, you're not interested in the PEDs, you don't have to. And then it shows the other information up on the screen. But normally you just look at it and go, yeah, that looks pretty good, and hit transfer, and then it brings the volumes to the screen. And you can see that the study was done from 6 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So long turning movement study, but pretty common these days with people doing long turning movement counts for a variety of reasons. And then from here you'd go back to the site data screen and finish the warrant study. And you can see that the software knows that there's enough data, so it makes the volume data green. So we're going to go back and we're going to start a new study, and let's go get some more data. Let's get a Trax Pro study. And it currently supports TWF files and TF2 files. Those are the last 2 types of files that JMAR has used for their Trax Pro software. I can pick a 4-day study. Now this screen again is almost identical to version 1. If you used it, then you probably understand how it works. Otherwise, it's probably very confusing to look at. This is a little bit busy screen, but once you get used to it, it's very nice and powerful. There are directions on what to do, but the basic idea is that you pick a day, and Wednesday is a nice day to pick. You know, either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday are the primary optimum days. So I'm going to pick this day. And I'm going to say that this is northbound through. And then I'm going to copy it to a little temporary scratch pad that's being used. And then I'm going to do eastbound, southbound, and westbound. At some point we may try to make the software smart enough to realize that WB probably means westbound, but at the moment you have to do it. So now we've transferred 4 approaches that were in this one combined Trax profile. Most of the time you'll have 4 separate files, but you can end up, there's ways in Trax Pro to end up with this file, so that's, I'm assuming that maybe this person did that. Alright, and so now we've transferred it to the temporary, we're ready to go back to the volume data screen, and It's transferred all the data. It's transferred the names of the streets, which in this case are not very interesting, location 1 and location 2. And again, the volume data screen is happy. So we can click OK. Now I'm going to go open a study so I can go show you the reports. And let's pick that one. And let's see what's okay. We're happy. Now let's go to reports. Now this screen's different because the major change in PC Warrants is we now have individual reports for each warrant. When you go to this screen, it shows you the warrants that are currently enabled. So we have warrants 1, 2, and 3. There's also a summary page. If some of the other warrants were enabled, they would be down here. So you can see that there's a little image of what the report looks like and a checkbox for you to select which ones you want. And the software only shows you the reports for the warrants that are enabled, which makes sense since the disabled warrants, you can't, the printout wouldn't mean anything. Now, if you're an experienced user of version 1, you know that we had a 2-page summary. And page 1 is essentially identical to page 1 of the old one. But there's no page 2. And because page 2 was where we had all of our problems, and so we just got rid of page 2, and now we have individual reports for each of the warrants. You can select all the reports by just clicking this button or clear all the reports. Let's just select them all and hit print. And what it does is it generates a preview. And again, for this tutorial, I had to make this screen a lot smaller than it normally is. It normally will fill your monitor and make the preview look readable. I realize you probably can't read this very well. I can do things like zoom in, and then you can see what's on the page, and you can skip to various pages. And again, on your monitor, you'll normally will see the entire page for most people that have decent sized monitors. Alright, so I can either print this to a printer or save it to a file. But let me back up a little bit and then show you what these look like. So you can see that there's a summary and it shows the warrants and whether they're evaluated or satisfied, and it has the information. So that's, again, pretty much the same as before. Now the individual warrants are pretty much the same information that are on the details screens. So the warrant 1A has the information, and then it has the same information on the grid, the volume data, that was on the details screen. And so this shows the 8 hours, 8 hours that meet the warrant for this particular data and which hours it is. And then because we want to show something else below here, it shows the hours that don't meet the warrant but that are the closest. And so you get one page that normally will show from 0 to 10 or 12 hours that meet the warrant, and you can see exactly which hours those are. And this, obviously this grid is only for warrant 1A. So warrant 1B, slightly different criteria, slightly different grid, but the screen looks very similar. Nice in color. If you have a color printer, it'll print in color. Otherwise, it'll print in shades of gray that still look pretty good. Warrant 1C, remember it has two separate criteria, 80% of 1A and 1B. So it shows both of those mini grids, and we think it looks good enough on one page that it doesn't have to be broken out into 2 pages, but that's one of the things that we'll be looking at from comments from people. Too small, break it out into another page or something like that. Now, warrant 2 has the tabular information, but it also has the graphical information. So we put both. I imagine some people may want just the graph, other people may want just the tabular. So I'm sure we can't make everybody happy. So hopefully we'll make everybody slightly unhappy with that by having both there. But I think the resolution is high enough that you can get a good sense for what each of these pieces of information are telling you. 3A doesn't have a graph, so it just has the tabular information. 3B has both. And that's all that's enabled on this particular study. And again, I don't want to make this tutorial 100 years old, so the other warrants have similar reports. A couple of them are 2 pages because there's just too much information to try to put on 1 page. If you want to see what those reports look like, on the downloads page of the support site, there's a PDF of all of the reports. So download that, take a look at that, and you can see what the other warrants look like. So that's pretty much what we want to show you right now. This is we're posting this software. It's pretty raw. We understand that. One of the problems that we have around here is that our computers are development computers, and they have a lot of test software on them that is not on standard computers. And since we develop a lot of Windows software, we have a lot of software for running Windows applications. Sometimes that means that software will run very nicely on our computers, but they're not happy on other types of computers that have slightly different software sets on them. So the only way for us to really find these bugs is to let people try it and see what happens. So if you don't like the idea of running beta software, then you probably want to stay away from this for now. If you don't mind the idea of beta software, you want to try this, you want to start printing your reports with these additional report formats that we have, then give it a try. Go to the downloads page of the support site, download it. The software installs on your computer but doesn't replace version 1. So if you try version 2 and you run into any problems, you can always go back to version 1 and to finish up what you're doing. The studies created in version 2 are identical to the studies created in version 1, so you can go back and forth between them. We were careful to make sure that that was true, because we didn't want to, if we didn't have to, break the support of version 1. And so far we haven't had to. It's worked out okay. So if you like this, like the idea of this, give it a try. If you want to actually run the software with your own data, then send us an email and either use the contact form on the support site, or on the downloads page there's information on how to send it to us. Send us an email saying you want to try this with a real data, and we'll send you a serial number that will expire in 2 or 3 weeks, whatever. That way you can try it. It's the full software. It's not crippled in any way, and but it will time out eventually, and we'll ask you to buy a license for the new software. The new software, the price is still going to be the same of $6.95 for new users. If you bought PC Warrants version 1 in the last year, the upgrade to version 2 is free, And if you're an older version or older user of version 1, then the upgrade price is $195, which we think is a pretty reasonable price for an entirely new piece of software. So let us know what you think, and I hope it works out for you. Thank you.